Have you ever thought to yourself, like, man, I actually want to self-publish a book, but I actually don't know how to start? Well, welcome. You're at the right place. My name is Aneem Awe. I'm a licensed clinical social worker, mental health therapist, clinical health educator, scrum master, and an author. And writing a book can be so powerful in your career because you can use it in so many ways, but most importantly, you can use it to remain booked and busy throughout your career. And I'm going to walk you through my process to self-publishing your own book. So make sure you stay tuned. And if you're new here, make sure you subscribe before we go any further. The first thing that I encourage people to do is to think about what type of book you are looking to write. Are you looking to write a children's book, a fiction, nonfiction, memoir, cookbook? What is it that you actually want to write? Get clear on that for yourself. And the reason why this is important because this is going to inform a lot of the next steps. So, number one, get clear on what type of book that you want to write. I think that's pretty obvious, right? So, considering you've already done that process, you have the idea. We're going to go through the natural steps that I've went through when I was going through my book writing process. So, what should I write about? That builds off of what am I writing about, right? So, are you writing this because you have a personal message you want to share with people? Maybe you have a testimony that you think is important to share with people. Are you sharing this because you want to educate people? Are you sharing this because you're a great writer? You just love creative writing and you just want to get this out there? All of those things are valid. There's no right or wrong answer with this per se. It all matters in terms of informing your marketing and informing the strategies that you will use to get the books out there and get them sold. You're not dealing with the publishing house, it's you as the publishing house. So you got to get creative because you won't necessarily have the bigger budgets that they have for getting these books out. So the other things to kind of consider is like ebook, hard copy, or do both, right? And then print and sell, how to find a viable printer, how to find a reliable printer, and get these books out there and get them on shelves, right? That's is a very cool way to make sure that people have access to the books that you're writing. So, the four W's that I've kind of come up with when it comes to developing your story, right? You've identified what kind of book you want to write. You're kind of identifying like what you want to write about. Now, how to sort of develop your story. Now, I was never a great writer or strongest writer, so I did have to hire a writing coach and an editor to work with me along the process. Now, if you are a strong writer, you feel like you can manage that, then you can totally forget that part. But back to the four W's. So, who, right? Who's your target audience when you're writing for? Are you writing a children's book? Are you writing a children's, a family book? Are you writing an adult novel? Like, you need to identify this because your writing style will need to match and be prepared for those individuals that you're writing this book for. And that's why it was so important for me to work with a coach. The second thing that is important for you to do is understand who this book is about, right? Like who is who is the protagonist, who's the main character, things of that nature. Having that really defined out. And sometimes I would just do exercises that my coach assigned to me to get character development or develop the characters that I was building out in my head. And so I pulled a lot from my personal life. I pulled a lot from the work that I was doing, and not in the sense of where I was violating HIPAA, but in the sense like understanding what the dynamics that I was viewing and seeing and what I wanted to bring to life or the story that I wanted to tell. And then next, understand who your main characters are, right? That's part of the character development. And again, give yourself time, give yourself space to really develop this character out. Who is this person? Maybe it's you, so it's a little easier. Maybe it's a friend that you grew up with, or maybe it's a fictional character based off whomever. Nobody needs to necessarily know the details, but you do, and you want to make sure you're clear on that. Next is the what, right? What are you writing about, right? Are you writing a story about a person that overcame a journey? Are you writing a story about um, a kid that develops into something, right? Get clear on what you are writing about. And again, that's going to come with time. So be patient with yourself. All in all, I would say this process maybe took me about 6 months. Actually, I'm lying. It took me about 3 months. From the moment that I conceived the idea that I was going to write a book, like I just went head straight into it. So the whole process, all in all, probably took me like 5 months from like start to finish launch. So some people need a little more time again because writing is your thing. This is your craft. So like, please, please, please honor whatever it is that you need. Then also consider what is the theme of your story. For me, I wrote a book about children's mental health, and my theme is about normalizing getting help around mental health, right? Like uncovering what that looks like for families so that we can change some of the stigma and the narratives around getting help as a Black boy. So that was the theme of my story. What inspired me to write this? Also think about what is inspiring you. I can share from my book. What inspired me was like the work that I was doing with children. I was seeing like kids were really struggling with emotional regulation. I was seeing adults struggling with emotional regulation, and I was also seeing a heavy ambivalence to access and care. So I wanted to I was intrigued by that, right? And of course I have personal stories like and so I wanted to give something to the community to normalize and educate. That was sort of my why, or that was what inspired me. And then you also have to understand sort of like your timeline, your character, your book timeline, like where are we going, A, B, C, and what does that look like, right? Um, and what is the enticing event, right? What is that defining moment within the book that sort of sets the book off? And what is the event in your book that changes the equilibrium of the story, right? What is the thing that takes the book from just like taking you on the journey and like that climax, right? That peak, if you will. That's important to identify and clarify and get that out really thoroughly to develop this story, right? You don't just want a dry story just like taking people on this sort of mundane world, if you will. You want to take them through a journey in some sense. Then we talk about the when and the why. So when will you know you are done with writing, right? That's one of the hardest things, because one of the things for me, it was hard to kind of finally say, I am done, right? No more editing, no more this, no more revision, no more having eyes look at it. I am done. And I found it to be sort of this journey of learning to trust myself, learning to trust my intuition, learning to trust what my work is and what my capabilities were. And so that was a really interesting process for me. Many people will find it easy, and it really just depends on who you are, right? Because you're putting this body of work together, you're putting it out there for the world to see, essentially. And so it can bring up a lot of feelings, it can bring up a lot of emotions, or it can challenge a lot of emotions. And so I just want to normalize that. And when do you know you have done enough editing and it's time to submit, right? Like I said, you can go through this vicious cycle, but at some point you're going to have to tell yourself, okay, this is enough. And that's when it can be helpful to have sort of like a writing coach or editor, and like you have that team there for you available. You give that body of work to them, or you're working simultaneously with them, and then get the final thing done, right? Whatever they say the final is, you agree with it, you like it, you love it, then done. We're going to submit it. So, and then the last thing I would say is to understand your why. Remembering your why is going to get you through this process, and it's important to remember that, because there are going to be challenging times. There are going to be times you feel like you just have nothing to give in terms of writing, and that's okay, right? But understanding your why and why you're doing this is going to help get you through those times where you just want to give up, or maybe you're doubting yourself or anything like that. So that's sort of the 4 W's, if you will, of the writing process, the early process of writing this book: character development, understand your target audience, and understand how you are writing, right? Are you writing for a first grader versus like an eighth grader? Because there is a difference, right, in reading comprehension. So making sure that you're writing to cater to that audience. The next thing that is really important that we got to think about is editing. The keys to editing, I would say, is to proofread your manuscript, review for spell check errors, grammar, all of that. Now, if you're anything like me, English is not my strong suit at all. So I did have to hire a team. You could go on things like Fiverr. I found mine's on, no, a friend of a friend connected me to my writing coach. You could also use any of those marketplaces where you can kind of hire a professional, depending on your budget, right? So you can set it towards your budget and kind of work towards that. Or if you have any friends, families, if you're a university student, take advantage of the, writing center. We had one of those in college. And so you absolutely need to proofread your manuscript, and review it, spell check, grammar. You want to just make sure all that stuff is correct. Copyright editing, excuse me, hire a professional for this. That's not within my wheelhouse. I don't necessarily expect it for it to be in everybody else's wheelhouse. So hire a copy editor. The other thing that was really important is like I got beta readers. I got a group of people who agreed to read my manuscript and just give me feedback. And so these were random people. These were friends, families, friends of a friends, and they just agreed to read the manuscript and give me feedback. Now, this is something that I did sort of like before we did like finalizations, but that was helpful to kind of understand and get the feedback and see how they were getting the story, or were they following the story. Did they feel like there was like a peak in the story, like giving me that really good feedback as readers, right? Especially avid readers. That's really good. And then next is formatting. Depending on where you're going to print your book, you want to make sure you follow that formatting standard. You know, KDP and Amazon, they have their own formatting requests. I use the small indie printer. They since changed their requirements, but they also have their formatting in regards to what they can print. So you want to make sure you're adhering to that. And again, if you're not a computer whiz, like I'm not, just hire. You know, I was fortunate enough that my illustrator was also able to do a lot of the formatting, so I got a 2-for-1 special. That might not be the case for every illustrator, so because I wrote a children's book and everybody won't be writing a children's book, so just something to consider. You do need someone in format, and again, you can go on Fiverr, you can go on any of those platforms and find a professional that can do this service for you. So that is sort of the stages of getting to finalization. And then I would say finally that the most important thing is deciding where you are going to sort of host this book, right? Where are you going to have this book? Once you have your manuscript done, it's proofread, it's edited, it's ready for printing, you've gotten it formatted, you have your, you know, like in my case, you have your sort of, Illustrator, and so like you have this thing, you have this PDF file, it's ready to go. What next, right? And so there are tons and tons of indie printers, and when I say indie printers, I mean like small, like book printers shop, like these are their businesses. It's been in their families for generation to generation to generation. So deciding who you want to go with. Also, there's Amazon, there's you know, there's Barnes and Nobles online. You can get your book online there. You could also get some in stores. And it really just starts by having a conversation online with the platform and letting them, expressing your interest to them around like your desires of having the book in the store. And also you can have like you can have sort of like reading times where you can host a live reading of your book. You just coordinate that with your stores. It sounds really big, but really it's just about having connections and talking to people and having those conversations. Um, and really just starting from there. The other thing I want people to think about, earlier I mentioned about, you know, who are you writing for, right? And so when we think about like selling our books and getting our books out there, it's important to understand like who are potential partners that can support you around this book, right? A big part of my success in my book came from partnering with schools, particularly the schools that I used to go to as a child, Boston Public School System. Shout outs to y'all. And so them buying books in bulks, Boys and Girls Club buying books in bulks, like so these organizations I've had relationships with buying books in bulks even till this day. I wrote my book 10 years ago, even till this day, and supporting me and helping my book get to this place. I've also had it on Amazon, so people who were wanting to sort of have it on their Kindle or whatever, your iPads or whatever, they had access that way. But I would do story times in the schools. Like there's just so many ways to sort of leverage it so that I'm able to sell more books. So think about those strategic partnerships that you have. It can be really helpful to kind of make sure that your book is sort of like living on, right? Living beyond and kind of continuously getting you opportunities. I also spoke at a university about my book. I had a public health class, which was really cool. And so there's just so many ways to continue to use this piece of or this body of work to continue to get booked, to continue to make sales 10 years later. And so it's awesome because a good piece of work can live out forever, right? You could stay busy. Think about some of your favorite authors or your favorite researchers, and think about like how they're able to consistently stay booked, especially when they release a book, right? Like that's marketing, that's strategy. And so obviously sometimes they have bigger teams behind them, but it's not impossible for you as an individual to do it because I'm here before you as a person who's doing it as well. So I think that's a really great way to kind of understand again, if you're writing this book, think about the longevity about it, right? Think about your long-term plan, right? And so think about who you're writing for, because that's going to help understand or inform some of the marketing that you're going to do. Some other things to consider is to invest in your ISBN number, right? This is the number that is assigned to your book, and it will follow the book for the duration of its life. So International Standard Book Number is a 13-digit number that allows for a specific publisher to be recognized. So you will be recognized by this number. So make sure you run through your script and make sure everything is all set, editing, all that good stuff. And then finally, once you decide what platform you want to be on, whether it's KDP, Amazon, Apple, whatever it is, upload, and you've officially completed and you self-published your book. Congratulations. And now the rest is up to you, right? So this is sort of my condensed way, if you will, about how to write a book. And it can seem convoluted, it can seem scary, it can seem like impossible, but it really isn't that bad. If I can do it, you can absolutely do it too. Let me know what questions you have below, and happy writing, and hopefully you have much success with your book.